everyone. I wanted to spend a few minutes today talking about an issue the whole country is facing, which is high fuel costs, and some initiatives to help mitigate them. There are no easy fixes to these challenges, given the global nature of prices, but there are steps we can take now to become more resilient in the future and less dependent on the volatile fossil fuel market. First, I realize we're just finishing up with winter and we're getting closer to the warmer months, but now is the time to think about making efficiency upgrades for next winter to save costs over the long run. That's why in the budget I propose, I asked the legislature to appropriate $80 million towards weatherization. This is in addition to the roughly $20 million investment in weatherization we made just last year. Fortunately, this is one area in the House-passed budget where we agree, and I hope the Senate does as well. Weatherization is beneficial for many reasons. It saves money, reduces carbon emissions, and combats climate change. You can learn more about state weatherization programs on the Department for Children and Family website. You could also, or you should also, check with your utility. Many of them have efficiency programs and incentives to help with upfront costs. Now, on the transportation side, I continue to be a strong supporter of electric vehicles. This year, I propose millions in electric vehicle incentives to make this transition more affordable. We're also going to continue to build out our charging infrastructure. The decision we made a few years ago to use the Volkswagen settlement money for this purpose has made us a national leader. But we have much more to do. That's why I'm happy to see the transportation bill from the House has funded many of these requests, which build on initiatives from last year. Currently, Vermonters can get up to $4,000 in state incentives for EVs, in addition to rebates from some utilities, and up to $7,500 in federal tax credits. You can visit driveelectricvt.com to see which makes and models are eligible, as well as to calculate your savings. I've long said that EVs are part of our future and will save people money in the long run. The transportation sector is also our largest contributor of carbon emissions. So the faster we make the transition, the better off we'll be from both an environmental and a cost standpoint. For example, gas prices, as we all are keenly aware, average over $4 a gallon today. While electric costs for charging your EV equal about $1.50 per gallon. And I don't think we'll see gas prices at that level anytime soon. But I know what you're thinking. Not everyone can afford or even find a new vehicle of any type right now, which is why continuing to work to make them more affordable and accessible is a priority. So in the near term, the Agency of Transportation continues to work to make transportation alternatives available. You can go to connectingcommuters.org to find schedules for local and commuter bus options and free fares through at least June. This service is also a good way to join a carpool, find the right park and ride location, or plan a convenient bike commute. My administration will continue to focus efforts on investing in greener and more affordable transportation. And before I turn it over, to help Vermonters who are dealing with high costs right now, I also want to again make a pitch for my progressive tax relief package, which costs about the same amount as the House tax plan. But mine helps over a quarter of taxpayers compared to theirs, which will only benefit about 10% of the population. My plan allows Vermonters to fully deduct their student loan interest from their income tax, saving many thousands a year. It also finally eliminates the income tax on military pensions, which I've talked about for years. It would further cut the income tax on Social Security benefits and expand the Earned Income Tax Credit, which has been proven to be one of the most effective anti-poverty tax relief proposals there is. To make childcare more affordable, it would also expand the childcare tax credit. And to help folks deal with inflation, I've also proposed sending Vermont residential property taxpayers a rebate check of about $275 because you overpaid. We have a surplus, and you should get some of that back. Not a credit, but a rebate that you can use right now. Although these ideas weren't taken up in the House, I'm hopeful the Senate will consider them because of how beneficial these proposals would be for their constituents. And with that, I'll turn it over to Dr. Levine.
Thank you, Governor. Good morning, or I guess it's afternoon now. I just have a few comments today. First, as a reminder, for those who can't see some of the slides I'm going to show, the modeling slides that I reference are available at the Department of Financial Regulation's COVID-19 website. But before I start with the slides, shortly before this briefing, I think they just knew this was going to alter the briefing. We learned from the FDA that they have now authorized second booster shots of both the Pfizer and Moderna for everyone 50 and older. They also authorized an additional booster dose for people ages 12 and older who have certain immune deficiencies. Now, this is very new information, and we've not yet had the opportunity to review the details about the authorization. We'll do so quickly, as we have for every move in the last several years, and we'll keep Vermonters informed of actions and guidance, including about receiving these booster shots. Now, to get to some of the data, the BA.2 subvariant of Omicron continues to make up an increasingly high percentage of cases. It's now over 72% in New England, and it's close to 55% across the country. However, as you'll see, cases are not growing exponentially, which is a good sign. In fact, on this first slide, you can see that the 7-day average of cases in Vermont is actually down 11% in the past week to 131. Over the last week, Vermont reported 109 fewer cases compared to the previous week, which is now 916. And you can see that in this epidemic curve, things are quite stable, even if they're being prolonged a little by the BA.2 variant. And this is at a time when testing, though it says decreasing 5.5%, has not really changed much at all. So testing has been stable during this time period. In terms of the modeling, new cases are expected to remain relatively low in the coming weeks, with some element of uncertainty due to the fact that this is the BA.2 subvariant, but not a wide variation in the modeling predictions. Hospitalizations remain steady and quite low. Down 87% from the Omicron peak, continuing to decrease. The number today is 12. Even more gratifying is the number of people in the ICU, down 94% since the peak, and at 0 today. And in only 31% of recent COVID admissions was COVID actually the reason for admission. Vermont continues to have the nation's lowest hospitalization rate. Unfortunately, death does continue to be a harsh reality with this virus, but it's noteworthy that deaths continue to decrease, as you can see, and the number of deaths in March, with only a few days remaining in the month, is 1/5 of the level of each of the 3 preceding months. Now, BA.2, as you know, is a more contagious version of Omicron, which itself was more contagious than the Delta variant. So it is possible that there may be a slight uptick in cases. It still is proving itself to cause less severe illness for most people, and Vermonters remain highly protected through vaccination. We will keep watching our data and monitor any changes closely. And we continue to strongly recommend that everyone stay up to date on vaccines and get tested if you have any symptoms. And by saying strongly recommend staying up to date, that recommendation predates what the FDA did today. And so for those who have yet to get the booster that was previously recommended, please keep in mind that would be a very, very positive thing to do to prevent serious outcomes of disease. In the meantime, please continue to take any precautions appropriate for your own comfort level and personal risk. And again, please take into account the risk of the people you will be with, especially older folks, children too young to be vaccinated, and people who may be immunocompromised. As you make these decisions, please remember that the easing of broad public health recommendations does not mean COVID is gone, but the risk is lower for us all, even though the virus is still with us, and we still need to consider when and how we may need to protect ourselves and those around us, depending on our circumstances. Now, one of the things that the BA.2 subvariant has changed is that one of the monoclonal antibody treatments, sotrovimab, is no longer being used in our region, where the variant is now prevalent, due to concern over its effectiveness. So the federal government has ceased shipping that to states in higher prevalence regions for BA.2. But that doesn't mean we have no treatment. In fact, we have a number of other treatments still available which will be effective, including the monoclonal antibody bebtelovimab and the pill Paxlovid. If you're at higher risk from serious illness from COVID-19 and you do test positive, please reach out to your healthcare provider as soon as possible to ask about such treatments. Finally, last time I previewed that we were planning to shift the offering of COVID vaccine from large statewide clinics to pharmacies and healthcare providers, the traditional medical homes where we receive other vaccines. While these large clinics have been incredibly successful since the initial rollout, they've had very low uptake recently. Now, the clinics that we listed on our website will not be going away, but starting this Friday, April 1st, they will be walk-in only, and appointments will no longer need to be made through the health department registration system. New clinics may still be added, but on a smaller community-level scale. We still encourage Vermonters to get vaccinated or boosted by walking into a clinic or making an appointment through a pharmacy or your healthcare provider. Vaccines are free, widely available across the state. We're hopeful that the pandemic is waning, but 2 years of experience and heartbreak tells us we have to stay ready for any new curveballs the virus may throw at us. And being up to date on your vaccinations is how you can best protect yourself against serious illness. You can find the list of clinics on our website, healthvermont.gov/myvaccine. I'll turn it back to the governor now.
Thank you, Dr. Levine. We'll now open it up to questions.
Starting folks in the room. Governor, as of this morning, we now have 3 counties, Washington, Windsor, and Essex, that are classified as high spread by the CDC's new guidance. I guess I'm wondering if you and Dr. Levine could refresh us on what that guidance is from the CDC and whether any changes needed on.
Yeah, again, from the very beginning, when all of this started, we decided not to go with the CDC per county type of approach because we travel to different communities. We travel to different counties, we work in different places, we're just so intertwined with everyone else, small state. So that didn't make a lot of sense to us. When you look at the hospitalizations, as Dr. Levine just said, 0 in the ICU today. 9, is it 9? 12. 12 in the hospital with COVID. That doesn't mean they got there because of COVID. I think it's about less than half of that. So we are very confident in our approach, looking at the metric of the hospitalizations. But there's a nuance to what the CDC is doing as well, and it has to do with hospital staffing as well. So I'll let Dr. Levine explain that.
As you know, these community levels use several different data points: the number of new cases per 100,000, new admissions per 100,000, the percentage of people in a hospital that are there for COVID specifically. And they created the system to really work for the whole country. And I have to say, frankly, it works better in some places than in others. Small states, especially small states with rural counties like ours, appear to have more unpredictable and variable case rates in these counties. And the difference between a count or a color on the map can literally be a few cases. And we've seen that as we analyze the data every week when it comes out from the CDC. Most of the time when a county is veered from green to another color, it's literally on the border of the two, and it just made it into the next color range. The community levels start with the cases per 100,000. So if you're already over the 200 cases per 100,000, you can only be yellow or red. And we have a few counties that meet that criterion alone. But these are the counties, like Essex County, that have very small populations, which often means a small number of cases leads to a very high rate. The map also takes into account, as I said, hospitalization rates. And again, here, small changes can make a very big difference. And in one of our hospitals, we've learned that a number of the staffed beds actually decreased because a number of the traveling nurses were not rehired again and weren't needed. Number of staff beds went down, but if the number of COVID cases stayed the same, it makes it look like you've had an increase in your hospitalization rate for COVID. So again, we're often very close to the cutoff in these levels, and a little movement makes a big difference sometimes when you look at the data. We really do believe that looking statewide at the data, with all the data that we can aggregate in that way, really helps us provide a lot more consistency in our recommendations, especially across counties where our highly mobile population lives. And whether they cross lines to shop, to get educated, to work, that happens all the time in our small state. So that's kind of how we approach this at this point. And I would just caution people that one can get into an endless cycle of reacting and overreacting to data without looking for good trends. And you can be sort of panicking one week, next week saying, oh, glad we, got by that one, and then the next week go, oh my God, I have to panic again. And that's not the way we want people to live. We think that the new way of living with the pandemic will rely on more trend data and on our statewide data.
Following up on that, one school district nearby, they've already gone back to masking. Some businesses here in Montpelier are reinstating it. Within the State House, they're even keeping it in committee rooms. Should people be changing their behavior?
People should change their behavior in whatever way is comfortable for them on an individual basis, for sure, because everyone's having challenges with transition at this point in time. But we don't believe that the recommendation for schools or other businesses should be so labile based on one piece of data at one time and then changing at another time for another piece of data. I don't know if Secretary French may have something to say about the schools, though.
Yeah, thank you, Dr. Levine. I think, just to echo on what folks have said so far, I think it is problematic in Vermont in particular, due to the small size of our counties, to operationalize that at the school district level on a weekly basis essentially promotes way too much instability in our schools at a time when we need to have greater stability. So as we've said throughout the pandemic to superintendents and school folks, that they really should defer to the Vermont Department of Health in interpreting the context and applying that specifically in Vermont. We've done that successfully throughout the pandemic, and I would encourage schools to do that now.
Just to reinforce once more, we have 12 people in the hospital today with COVID. Only four are in for COVID. The rest, 12, 0 in the ICU. I think we're doing pretty well.
Governor Scott, with regard to fuel costs, specifically home heating costs, since companies can set their own prices, is there any idea of whether these companies are price gouging right now to take advantage of consumers, just given the fuel cost climate?
I'm not aware of anyone. They're all competing with each other as well. So I'm not hearing that there's any price gouging, but that might be a better question for the Attorney General.
Governor, some criticism of the transportation bill is that perhaps we haven't put enough into roads and bridges, and we're putting a heck of a lot into the electric cars and getting that infrastructure going. Your reaction?
No, I think we're actually, if you take a look at the transportation budget, between the money that we have, that we normally program, and the additional money we're receiving from the federal government, we're probably at historic levels for both paving, roads, bridges, traditional infrastructure. So I'm not concerned about that at this point in time. We'll see how the transportation bill makes it through the rest of the process. But again, there's a lot of construction out there right now. And what my biggest concern is inflation, inflationary pressure, and that we're getting actually more projects completed and not just inflating the prices of those.
Governor, quickly, I want to ask about Beta Technologies. The South Burlington Development Review Board is going to be revisiting or holding a special meeting where Beta may have to seek more local construction permits. Are you concerned that Beta, if they have to go through this process, are you concerned that they may take their business elsewhere?
I'm very concerned. This is something that I've been concerned about for quite some time. I've been made aware of this latest issue with the DRB in South Burlington. It all is because of a parking lot. Most of the regulations apparently say the parking lot has to be behind the building, right? When you're building something new, parking lot goes behind. Well, this is a little bit different. This is Beta, where they're building aircraft, and they're doing it next to the Burlington Airport. And the front of the house is actually the runway. So you can't put parking. I mean, traditionally we think about a building where the front entrance is off from the highway. That's not their front entrance. This is, again, they do all their business off the runway. So to put the parking and trying to reconfigure their whole design and move their operations closer to the highway so they can have parking behind their building, it just makes no sense at all. So hopefully they'll revisit that. If they can't fix it, either the DRB can't fix it or the city of South Burlington the council can't fix it, I'll seek a legislative fix because this is too important for Vermont. This is not just about jobs for Chittenden County. This is going to have a ripple effect across the entire state, whether it's Franklin County, Washington County, Rutland County, all across Vermont. And this is transformational. And this is going to change Vermont in a positive way. When you consider, I think this is as big as when IBM decided to locate in Vermont. This is going to have that big an impact on us. And it's green energy, green technology, cutting edge. They have hundreds of aircraft already online, ordered, and they're begging us. They want to stay in Vermont. This is the leadership of Beta wants to be here. But they have another alternative, and that's across the pond in Plattsburgh. And they have an airport there. They have space available. They have everything that they need, and they could quickly change course and go to Plattsburgh. And I just can't let that happen. We can't let that happen. This is too important to Vermont, and they don't want to let it happen either. So it seems like there's a path forward somehow. And again, hopefully the DRB will be able to fix this, if not the city council. But then I'll address and ask the legislature to do something quickly. Because just delaying this project by a month could mean a delay of up to 3 or 4 months. Then we get into weather issues. We have a tight construction year in Vermont as well. They have contracts that they've signed. So they're not going to have much choice. If this is delayed, they may not have any choice but to seek another alternative location. But they want to be here.
All right, we'll move to the phones, starting with Wilson Ring, the Associated Press.
Hi, everybody. As always, thanks so much for letting us participate here remotely. This is another question, I guess, a variation on the statistical question that I don't know who answered it first, but Dr. Levine answered it at great length. Over the last several weeks, I've noticed that depending on whose statistics you're reading, Vermont's cases of per capita COVID cases has been rising up the charts. And today, the New York Times shows Vermont has the second highest per capita. And I certainly understand about the good news about it is the lowest with the hospitalization and the deaths are low. But what is going on with the raw case numbers that are driving up those statistics?
I think it comes down to our robust testing. I think we're testing a lot in Vermont. In fact, I think per capita may be one of the highest in the country. So that, leads to more cases. I mean, it's not a bad thing. It's just it leads to more cases. But I'll let Dr. Levine answer that further.
Yeah, thanks, Wilson. We asked that same thing at our health operations call this morning, and we're still not clear on why the New York Times data looks that different. Originally, it looked different because there was a part of the state that there were a bunch of cases that were added back retrospectively as part of data cleanup, and that should no longer be the reason at this point in time, especially when you look at the number of cases I showed in the earlier slides, where clearly we're on a decreasing trend, not an increasing trend, and there's so few cases being reported. So it doesn't make a lot of sense, and it's a little bit inconsistent, if you will, if we actually have the lowest hospitalization rate and amongst the lowest death rate, cases don't really fit that mold at all. As the governor said, we are actually, if you ignore the District of Columbia, which is the highest, we are the #1 state for testing. So we know a lot more about cases than any other state just because we're finding them. But other than that, I can't give you any better reason.
Okay, thank you very much.
Lisa Loomis, the Valley Reporter.
Hello, this question is probably for Dr. Levine. I was reading this morning that Evusheld, and forgive me if I pronounced that or if I butchered that pronunciation, the injectable COVID treatment which can help immunocompromised and healthy people from catching COVID, has been ordered federal government to the tune of 850,000 doses. And I also read that 8% of those doses are sitting unused in warehouses, hospitals, and pharmacies. Does Vermont have doses of this injectable, and do we have calls for using it?
Yeah, so your pronunciation was fine. Evusheld.
Thank you.
And 80% is correct, so across the country, 80% of the doses do not seem to have been used. They're being warehoused, if you will. I don't know the percent of doses in Vermont that fit that, but we have abundant doses available to be used in Vermont. We have had plenty of doses used, by the way, but it's always hard to know if it's the appropriate number because this is for a very select population. These are people who are immunocompromised or for whatever reason aren't going to be able to benefit from the vaccine. So that's a small percentage of the total population, and it all depends on how their clinicians interpret the risk. Some of these people may have a disease that leads to immunocompromise. Many who are eligible, though, have diseases that are being treated with medications that make you immunocompromised. And that can be in the rheumatology field, the dermatology field, gastroenterology, transplants, you name it. So there's a whole host of people who just may not have assessed their risk as being high enough to warrant using this preventive medication, even though they might benefit from it.
Got it. Thank you very much. That's it for me.
Guy Page, Vermont Daily Chronicle.
Hello, Governor. You mentioned the Commuter Connect. What I'm wondering is that's a real incentive, whereas the legislature, at least in the transportation bill, is using more of a requirement, where they're requiring employers to have their own commuter plans to reduce the number of commuters. Seems sort of a carrot and stick approach, and I'm wondering what you think about that, using a requirement instead of an incentive to reduce fossil fuel commuter traffic.
Well, again, I always would prefer the carrot approach and trying to provide incentives to do that. I think the incentive today is the high cost of fuel, and I think that looking for the alternative types of transportation would be important. I wasn't aware of the stick approach that you're referring to, but we'll take a look. I just hadn't heard that part.
Okay. We've also had small outbreaks of a highly contagious avian flu in 3 neighboring states. A cyber attack this month that shut down milk production at H.B. Hood and Booth Brothers. And the New York Times is talking about global hunger due to supply chain, energy problems, Ukraine. And I'm wondering, I guess it's really 2 questions. One for Secretary French, if he's available, how the cyber attack affected school milk supplies. And also, if your administration is thinking about possible Vermont food shortages, and if so, what are you planning to do about it?
First of all, I would just say that we're very aware of the cyber attacks, something we've been talking about for quite some time, and that risk has been heightened due to the issue in Ukraine with the Russian trying to disrupt all kinds of economies, including our own. So we're on top of that. We've been trying to put in firewalls in many of our throughout our technology system to prevent some of this from happening. But having said that, it really is only as strong as the weakest link, and sometimes that's us. And clicking on the wrong link might let a bad actor in. So our Secretary of at the Agency of Digital Services, as well as our Public Safety Commissioner, have been working in tandem, working together with our cabinet to try and make sure that we're aware of what's happening. So again, we're well aware of what they're trying to do, and we're trying to prevent that from happening. In terms of feeding ourselves, again, trying to work with the Secretary of Agriculture in many different ways, I think a lot of what we've been through over the last couple of years, I think opens our eyes more to trying to take care of ourselves, both as a nation, but as well as a state. So we have been trying to use the Working Lands initiatives as well as to try and make sure that people are aware that we need our farms. This is part of the backbone of Vermont, but we need them to feed ourselves. It's something that simple, and it really is about the public safety aspect of our state as well. So, having said that, we're still pushing forward. Secretary Tebbets probably can answer some of the questions about what we're doing about that, but slaughterhouses, trying to incentivize more farming production in different ways and providing modernization in that respect. It's all on the table and something that we've been doing for a number of years now. Secretary French, are you aware of any? I don't believe there was any shortage of milk due to the cyber attack, but I think that was fairly short-lived.
Yes, Governor, I'm unaware of any impact on school food supply. I would just highlight in parallel that we have resources on cybersecurity for school districts at the agency. We've been highlighting those resources in the last couple of weeks, and it's something I'll have on my list to highlight with the superintendents when I meet with them on Thursday.
What sort of resources, Mr. Secretary?
We have national level resources that are put out for schools. They're on our website. Be happy to share a link with that guy if you'd like.
Thank you. I would. Thank you.
Greg Sakanik, Bennington Banner.
Good afternoon. I believe this question might be for either Secretary French or Secretary Moore. This is with regards to school sports in the spring. Some readers in Brattleboro have asked us if there are going to be any masking requirements for high school sports in Vermont in the spring, and if so, what they are.
Secretary French, I don't believe there are, Greg, but Secretary French?
That's correct. No mask requirements. Most of the spring sports are outdoors. It's something we had on our radar as we were making the transition to the March 14th guidance, but we have no plans for that at this moment.
Okay. Actually, one more question, Governor. The federal government did announce that the United States would be accepting 100,000 Ukrainian refugees. I asked the same question last week and realized these things move slowly, but just checking to see if if you've been made aware of any opportunities for Vermont to accept any of those refugees.
Yeah, I'm not aware of any at this point in time. Obviously, we've been focusing on the Afghan refugees, and we've made great strides there, as you are well aware. I think we have over 200 now who have relocated to Vermont, but we welcome any Ukrainians. I will say I was at a Rotary Chamber of Commerce luncheon last week in Windsor County, and there's a Springfield exchange student from Ukraine, and the Rotary is trying to raise money to bring his family into the state here in Vermont. They have a place, I think it's a local parish of some sort that maybe has housing for them, but they're trying to raise money to do that. And this was before the announcement, the Biden announcement of the 100,000. So I did put out that information to our congressional delegation, and hopefully we can provide the resources necessary to bring this family in and anyone else that may have relatives as well. So we, again, remain ready, willing, and able to do whatever we can to help those who are, in conflict right now and in danger in their own country or in other countries, Poland, for instance, as well.
Okay, thank you very much, Governor.
Tom Davis, Compass Vermont.
Thanks, Jason. Dr. Levine, what is what are you advising on the second booster for people over 50?
As I said at the beginning of my comments, since it just came out literally minutes before the press conference, we need to read closely what the FDA is saying and analyze what data they have provided to make that recommendation. I will note that what I've seen thus far says from the FDA that people over age 50 may receive another booster, as opposed to a stronger recommendation than that. But that's about all I have to go on right this moment, and we'll have more to say after we've done our review.
Okay, thank you. Governor, I was curious if there's some way to work on a protocol when it comes to missing persons. Had a lot of feedback recently when state police have put out notices of people who are missing, and when the press cooperates and tries to get information out, the one comment I get back most often is we never hear or rarely hear from people who are saying that it would be great if the state police would follow up just as they do with the first report about the missing to when they're found.
I think that's a great point, Tom. Unfortunately, Commissioner Sherling isn't on today, nor is Deputy Commissioner Morrison, but I'll have one of them get in touch with you and see what we can put together, because that does make a lot of sense. Fairly good job, or I've seen a lot of the media reports where there's been missing people, but we need to tell the good news too.
Okay, I appreciate that. One last question. I don't know if you know about the way for Commissioner Sherling. Recent saturation patrol picked up 19 motorists who were using their electronic handheld devices. Most of them were texting. Did we have their ticket or were they warned?
I don't know. I would assume so, but I really don't know. We can have them follow up with you on that as well.
Okay. Thank you very much. That's all I have.
Thank you.
Andrew McGregor, Caledonian Record.
Yes, thank you. Good afternoon. Governor opened the conference with comments on rising gas prices and other inflationary pressures. Wondering if at the state level there's any projections or anticipation of whether that'll have a dampening effect on summer tourism or the wider economy for that matter?
You know, it's hard to say, and it really depends on whether it goes any higher. It is heading down a bit now. Hopefully that's a trend that will continue, but I haven't heard that there is any concern about some of the travel. And I think from our standpoint as well, we're going to benefit from the border opening up, so we'll have more travel. That was what we've been missing for the last couple of years from our Canadian friends, basically most of them from Quebec. So that has opened up, and we look forward to that. And from what I'm seeing of late in terms of the activity on our roadways, I'm not seeing that there's fewer people traveling from other parts of the Northeast. So those trends, even with the higher gas prices, we're still seeing people come for skiing and so forth, and we're not seeing that decrease. It seems to be staying pretty steady.
Okay, thank you very much.
Ed Barber, Newport Daily Express.
Yeah, good afternoon. Governor, it was a little over 2 years ago that you declared the pandemic. Can you tell us what criteria that you have for the day when the day comes when you can stand at a press conference and say the pandemic is over? Is it based on regional or Vermont data? Is it based on number of deaths? At what point can you say the pandemic is officially ended, even if there's still positive COVID cases?
Yeah, I think we can safely, at this point in time, say that we've transitioned to endemic. But to say it's over, I just can't predict the future. I just don't know. The next variant, I just don't know. So we're going to have to, we don't have a real playbook on this, especially with COVID and all the variants that come along with it. But so far, so good. I mean, this is great news that we provided today. And we think that because the last strains were so transmissible, that a lot of people either have been vaccinated or have actually had results. So again, we'll take one day at a time, or 1 week at a time, or 1 month at a time. But right now, it's looking pretty good, and I'll let Dr. Levine add to that.
Just one quick addition. I don't believe Governor Scott declared that we had a pandemic in March. It was more, we were part of an epidemic here in the U.S. and part of a state of emergency. But pandemic has worldwide implications, and that was really the World Health Organization. And so no matter what we say in Vermont, I think most of us realize that the rest of the world is still having many places where this virus is quite active and causing a lot of death at times, and certainly hospitalizations and illnesses at other times. And we know that vaccination rates in places like Africa, many of the countries are literally 12 or 14%. So I don't think on a worldwide stage anyone's been ready to say the pandemic is over. But I do agree with the governor that we are certainly transitioning our behaviors to more of an endemic posture with circumstances the way they are in our region and in our state right now.
Very good. Thank you very much.
Tim McQuiston, Vermont Business Magazine.
Hi, Governor. I noticed in the jobs report from late last week that professional business services was up, which has been kind of a problem for Vermont over the years, long before the pandemic. I was wondering if you would know why jobs in that high-paying sector would be up at this point. What are you seeing?
I don't know. Maybe it is the high pay. Maybe it's people seeking to relocate to a safer state, and maybe even work remotely. I just don't know. It's a good point, but hopefully that will continue.
I had an EV question, actually. I have a fully EV car, and one of the things I've noticed is that the state could really use a lot more fast chargers, the level 3 DC charges. And I see you nodding your head. And I was wondering if you have plans to put them into the rest stops along the highways.
I'm not sure that we can do that, but I will check with our transportation folks, because I know we can't, because we use federal funding to build some of the rest areas on the highways, that we can't sell gas, for instance. We can't sell products at the rest areas. So I'm not sure if we can sell electricity either to charge, but we'll certainly check. Some of, we are encouraging and we're trying to make available some in the commuter lots. That would be one area, if we could designate those areas as charging locations with faster charging capabilities, as well as with some of the convenience stores and so forth along the highway. So we're moving in that direction. We want to make it as easy as possible, but point well taken. But I'll check on that, because I don't believe we can, but I'll check to be sure.
Okay, I've noticed them like in the New York State Thruway. They have them at the tourist stop, at the rest stops there.
Yeah, I think.
But they sell gasoline there too.
Yeah, see, they didn't use federal money to build them. They used tolls, and bonded for it. So they have more flexibility than we do. We accepted federal money, so we're under restriction for a lot of things in Vermont in terms of why. I mean, we received 90 to 95% federal funding to build the highways, and they did it on their own.
Okay. Yeah, that makes a lot of sense. Thanks, Governor.
Yep.
Colin Flanders, 7 days.
Hi, thanks. A couple hours ago, the Department of Corrections announced that it was placing the superintendent at the Newport prison on paid administrative leave, and that the superintendent will not be returning to his position. But the press release announcing this contains very little details about why this happened. I'm curious if we can get a better explanation of why this change is occurring.
Yeah, I'm aware of the situation and have been briefed, but I may refer that one to Secretary Samuelson if she's on.
Yes, absolutely, and thank you for the question. These are always really difficult decisions. Vermont DOC is leaning into a significant culture change to aim improving morale and well-being of both staff and incarcerated individuals. I think it's important to achieve these goals that the change requires clear and proactive leadership with a focus on making the best decisions in good faith and with integrity. As you noted yesterday, following concerns that were raised and a thorough review by DOC and Human Resources that over the past month, Superintendent Scott Martin was put on administrative leave and will not be returning to his post. Assistant Superintendent Mike Kohler will serve as acting superintendent. Again, this was a difficult decision and was unrelated to deaths earlier this month of Michael Purnell or the 7 Days article. For more information, Commissioner Demo and his team are happy to take and answer questions offline. So if folks reach out, we can make that connection for you.
Okay, I'm sure we will be following up with Commissioner Delver. I'm just curious, Del, I'm sorry. I'm just curious if there's anything else you can say at this point. I mean, concerns were raised. Is there any indication of what types of concerns, what we're talking about here?
Yeah, I can't delve into it deeply, but the concerns come out of his management and the direction and his leadership at Northern State Correctional Facility. Again, we can't go into deep detail, but again, it was a thorough review by the department and by Human Resources.
And sorry, you said the review lasted a months. When did this review happen?
It's happened over the past month or so. Again, Commissioner Demo can provide you with more detailed information with the exact date.
Thank you.
Aaron Patenko, VT Digger.
Hi, I believe this is a question for Dr. Levine. As we've been discussing during the presser today, the various metrics of measuring COVID in Vermont, case rates, hospitalizations, the severity of hospitalizations. We don't often hear officials discussing wastewater data, although you've previously mentioned it as kind of an exciting new opportunity. There's no one collected place to see wastewater data in Vermont, and it doesn't seem to be utilized, these pressers, to kind of evaluate how the state is doing. And I'm also specifically asking that because the latest Burlington wastewater report showed that COVID was on the rise, but it does seem to vary depending on exactly which wastewater plant you look at. So I would just appreciate some clarity on how that data is used.
Absolutely. Thanks for bringing the topic up. Because it's not just Vermont, it's the whole country that's sort of grappling with how do we use this data, how do we report this data, how do we actually analyze it in a way that it has meaning and can predict future events. So Burlington is probably the longest standing site in Vermont that's been doing this, and their counts have increased over the last week, They have three different, I'll call them watersheds, for lack of a better term. Two of them are very, very modest increases. The third is a larger increase, although the levels that they're measuring are nowhere near where they were at a peak of various variants in the past. The National Wastewater Surveillance System is actually what our newest sites are all reporting to and involved with. And their primary metrics are percent total change over a 15-day period. So again, just like I've been emphasizing in other topics here today, not reacting to data that's not able to show trends and that's obtained too quickly in terms of data points from previous data points. We have 4 sites that are reporting through that system, and they have enough data to show us a trend, and their trend is actually a decrease. Some as low as 10% decrease, others close to 100% decrease. And the curves that you come out with when you look at that actually look very similar to the case curve I provided at the very beginning of the press conference, looking like we're on the tail of Omicron. So there's a little bit of conflicting data with these 4 sites versus the Burlington site that I can't explain, but that is what the data is showing at this point in time. We have a couple other sites that are just coming online, so their data hasn't really accumulated enough to be analyzed. And we'll have a few other sites that are not even submitting specimens yet, but they are signed up, and we anticipate we'll be doing so in the future. So that's what we have for wastewater data right now. One piece of data from our largest collector, if you will, that is not going in the right direction, but it's not dramatically wrong, and a bunch of data from other sites that actually looks like some improvement. Does that help you?
Yeah. Are you aware of why the Burlington wastewater treatment plants are not participating in the CDC collection? It does feel like it's difficult to kind of compare apples to apples when one's looking at like a 15-day period of percent change and the other is looking at kind of like these hard numbers of viral load.
Yeah, I don't have the firm reason, although my guess would be that they were just very early adopters and got this rolling at a time when, frankly, the field was much more growing and still learning about what its potential was. But I'm not sure that's the entire answer to your question. That's as far as I can take it, though.
Okay. I also have heard that there's a wastewater treatment plant, Brighton,
Yes.
that is collecting data, but the CDC doesn't release that data because it's got less than 3,000 people in it. Do you still receive that data? Are you able to view it?
Yes, we have received that data. I don't know what Brighton's most recent data is, but we have them as one of our sites.
And do you have any, intentions or discussions about publishing this wastewater data separately from the CDC so that, Vermonters can view it?
Yes, and again, I think like other states, we're all on the same learning curve, and we're just trying to learn how to aggregate the data appropriately and interpret it, and make sure that people are appropriately led by it as opposed to misled by it.
Yeah. So like maybe as part of your kind of endemic transition strategy, coming up with some way to, release that data in some capacity.
Yeah, no, I think you're absolutely right, and it's been on our drawing board because I raised this issue quite a number of months ago, even before most of these sites were online. So more to come.
All right. Thank you very much.
That's it. Thank you very much. We'll see you again next week.